We have a quick little film. I think we should show that first, and then we'll have Fox speak. So if you would, please. And if you could get the lights.
A California lawmaker now calling for a full audit of that state's child protection services after the agency helped police take a 5-month-old baby boy from his parents after they told a hospital that was treating their child they wanted a second opinion on his medical condition and the diagnosis that he needed surgery. They took him from the hospital against medical advice, and they didn't take him home. They took him to another hospital. And that hospital said, okay, fine, you can go back home with him now. We'll schedule a surgery later. The next day, the police and Division of Child and Family Services showed up at their house, and now this lawmaker and others are very unhappy, and a lawsuit is coming. Let us take you back to the day the police and DCF arrived at this mother and father baby's house.
Okay, you gotta let go of the baby, okay? Listen, if you don't, we're going to take you to jail. Because right now, you're delaying and you're going to be resisting.
I called the hospital.
You're gonna go to jail, okay? So let go of the baby.
Don't put your baby through this.
So I'm gonna grab your baby and don't resist and don't fight me, okay? So move your hands.
Please.
Move your hands.
He's
And
gonna be fine.
come on, man.
Where is he gonna be? I will tell you. Where is he gonna be?
He's going to a hospital.
Which one?
You'll be able to visit. Okay,
Which
we're
one?
going to schedule visits.
Which one?
We're not going to tell you right now because I don't think you're acting, rationally right now.
Really? She wasn't rational? To all the moms out there, would you have been more rational if they were taking your baby out of your hands? I think she was pretty calm. Tim Donnelly is the California Assemblyman looking into this case, and Joe Weinberger is an attorney for baby Sammy's mother, Anna, who joined me on the program on Monday and told us that they're getting ready to sue. Let me just start with you on it, Joe, again, because we have so much feedback from our viewers who are so outraged as they watch that tape and say, do it, sue whoever you can sue, so this doesn't happen to another family. But let's get specific. Who really is to blame?
I'd like to think that it's just a failure to communicate, but the reality is this is something that happens far too frequently. CPS oversteps its bounds, tries to protect its image more than the people they're charged with the care and custody of, and they rip children off from their parents all the time.
Well, Assemblyman Donnelly, I know you're outraged over this, and you've been asking questions. This is the quote I read of you. You started contacting officials at Sutter, officials at CPS. You said, are these parents abusive? They said no. You said, quote, then what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, what's the crime here, Megan? That's really the question. The mother is the only rational figure here, and so I'm demanding answers from CPS, and because they're a government agency, and you saw the way that social worker acted. It's as if she's the judge, jury, and executioner. What I'm getting is hundreds and hundreds of stories from individuals who are saying, this happened to me and my child's been taken away, can you help me? So we're going to conduct an audit.
There's a term that those that are forced to deal with CPS on a regular basis come to detest. And that term or that expression is in the best interest of the children. That's a catchphrase that's used by CPS to justify any action.
Okay, that gives you a quick intro. Fox is a person who's been deeply touched by this situation, and I'll let her explain your story, but I want you to give her a round of applause for making tonight happen.
Well, first off, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your concern and caring about this issue. And I personally want to thank two people in the room. First of all, whoops, sorry, attack me. Sorry, down. Is Dr. Barbara Murray. Dr. Barb, say hi. She has been so helpful in helping me to understand the system. She is a licensed therapist, and that she had worked with the county in evaluating children and helping with the placement issues. And the other one, who none of this would have happened because she is a computer whiz, Sue Aubert, flyers. She does everything I don't do on the computer, which is everything. Anyway, just really quickly, we have been described as the most tragic family in Santa Cruz, and we certainly ran the gamut. Jerry and I were at the Board of Supervisors, and I ran through all the people that had passed away within like 3-4 years. And it was a lot of loss in the kid's life. And I have 3 grandchildren. They're 9, 10, and just 3. And their mother hit kind of a rough patch and went off the reservation, as we say. And the children had lost grandpa, a couple of uncles, their dad, and their mom. And then they were taken away from me and their great-grandmother, who's going to be 103 in a few days, and put in a foster placement, which I found to be totally inappropriate, especially since my grandson is special needs. And after losing my phone number and not allowing me to see my grandkids for 3.5 weeks, we got a brief 1-hour visit, and at that time I saw that my grandbaby was pretty much a zombie. I mean, she had shell shock. She didn't know which end was up, and I was alarmed. My grandson was thin and pale and obviously not doing well, and my granddaughter was not present, and it's like, where is she? Oh, she went to Disneyland with foster parents. Without our knowledge or permission. She was just gone. So it has been an ordeal, and thank goodness I finally got a computer after about 6 months. My bad. And I was watching the news, and Robert Powell was on speaking about this baby Sammy. And I and another grandmother, Roberta, back there, are pretty much in the same boat. We are fighting to get our grandkids back. And we were at a kinship meeting, and I said, I think I found an attorney who can help us. And that was Robert. And we had Robert on Georgia's show, and he mentioned a book that had just been published, A Culture of Fear, an inside look at Los Angeles County Child and Family Services. I went out and got a copy of that book, and I was shocked and vindicated, because there we were, page after page. Our story, how the system works and doesn't work, and it certainly doesn't work on our, and especially the children's behalf. So I contacted Jerry and Bob in order to get me off his back, referred me to Carin, and all of a sudden it's like, we have attorneys that represent children and families in dependency court, and they're good at it, and they specialize, and they know the law. So we just started connecting the dots, and so here we are tonight. Jerry's book is in the back at our table. I really encourage you to pick up a copy. It gives a very clear picture of how badly broken and dysfunctional the system is. Yet, he has absolutely wonderful suggestions on how to fix it, and he has proven programs that have, to the benefit of our families. And this is what we have to support, is how do we go about fixing it? Jerry's a good start, and then we've got these wonderful attorneys who are going to be helping us legislate, write legislation. Yeah. So here we are. So I'd like to introduce, let's see, we'll go with Carin Johnson, is from Walnut Creek, and she has been practicing, specializing in this for about 22 years.
20-something years.
27, okay, we'll leave it at that.
I don't know the number.
Oh, okay. And so she was kind enough to come down from Walnut Creek tonight to speak to us. Robert Powell is from San Jose. He's been doing this for several decades and has a real sincere understanding and love for the department, as I understand.
That's one way to put it.
And Julian Jerry Dominguez, who wrote the book, who was brave enough to take the facts and put them out there for all of us to see. And those of us who have been walking the fires of hell of CPS, he just told us, you're not alone, this isn't right, and we can fix it. So in the back at our table, we also have grand jury forms, so if you would really like to help, that's a good starting place. Request that the grand jury do an audit of the procedures and practices of CPS, and also to investigate these allegations of their abuses of children and family. I just got word that they did it on the jail where my daughter died. The grand jury stepped in and really is taking a good close look at the jail. There have been 5 deaths. I thought there were 4. So serious problem, and the grand jury is a good place to start. And I also have another little sheet with different websites that you can go to. Very informative. Got to have a strong stomach though. All right, we're going to start off with Jerry. I'm going to give him the floor.
I'd like to say that the example that you just heard from Fox is isolated, that it's somehow an outlier, and that maybe this doesn't happen very often. But when you start to find out about what's going on around this state and around the country, you realize very quickly that this is not the exception to the rule. This is an experience that we're seeing over and over again with families. When you start to understand and realize that the individuals that are really making decisions about who's going to remove your child, should somebody call in a report, you start to realize that, oh my goodness, what they're basing it on, in many cases, is simply speculation, a concern that I have, or maybe I heard something. Maybe a third party suggested something. It is, in fact, possible for someone to get a knock at about 11:30 from a stranger. They may have 1 or 2 police officers. You just put the kids to bed. You open the door. That stranger walks in, they have an identification, social worker. And you're kind of wondering, what's wrong? They have police with them. What's going on? Well, we got this referral and we got to talk about it. We're concerned about your kids. Well, they're okay, they're asleep. Well, we're going to need to wake them up, because we're going to need to talk to them, because there are things in this referral that say that there may be a concern or a problem with your kids. Yeah, but they're asleep. No, but we need to talk to them. And of course they have law enforcement, so you're wondering, well, I better not disagree, I better cooperate, because now you start to wonder, oh my goodness, things you may have heard from those other people that this happens to. Okay, well, they talk to your kids. Well, they're not saying a lot, but you know, these things in this report, we have real concern, and we've heard these things, and we're going to have to take the kids. You're going to do what? I'm sorry, we're going to have to take the kids. It's better not to resist, and we're going to let you know where they are in the morning. We'll give you a phone number. What do you mean you're taking my kids? And then before you know it, they're telling you to pack bags. Pack the bags of the kids. And they're walking out the door with your kids. And you're going, oh my God, what just happened? And you start calling around. They just took the kids. And you're trying to figure it out. What happened? What did I do? What? That's happening. That very scenario I've heard over and over again. And when you get to court, because you're supposed to go to court within 72 hours, and you arrive, and you kind of hear what someone has said, called allegations in this thing called a petition, and you're thinking, who are they talking about? What do you mean that represents me and that's what I did? Who said so? I mean, who proved this? Who provided the evidence? But you know what? At that first hearing, all they need to have is that report that on the face of it, it looks reasonable. you know what? We're going to have to keep the kids in temporary custody, and we're going to set it for the next hearing. It'll be within 30 days. And we call the next one jurisdictional dispositional. We're going to discuss in more detail these concerns, because on the face of this report, I think there's a legitimate reason to hold the kids over. Maybe your kids have never even been to a sitter, but now they've been separated. Now they're not with you. And oh my God, what's going on? What do you mean I can see my child an hour over the next week if I cooperate? What do you mean you have a problem that I'm angry and upset? And don't show that you're angry and upset, because guess what happens if you show that when you're in court? I'm not sure we have a stable person here. Yeah. You're acting kind of irrational. I mean, I'm not sure you can handle kids. And then they do what we call in my profession pathologizing your reaction. Yeah. Oh my goodness, I guess there's a good reason why we took the kids, because after all, look at how you're acting and reacting. Can you imagine if that parent didn't react that way? That will be used against you too oftentimes if you don't react. React, don't react. And by that time it's almost too late, because now your kids are in the system. What a lot of people don't know is the reports that end up in court with regard to the removal of a child, on the bottom you'll see a name, and that in theory is the author. But that's not the person that decides what information goes into the report and what ends up in court. It'll be a supervisor, an administrator, a manager. Individuals that will never see you, never see your children, never see you interact with your children. In my book, I refer to them as the ghost authors, the phantom authors. The ones that are actually making the decision, that are deciding, well, we have these concerns after all, and based on my prior experience, I think we have a situation here. I'm not sure that caregiver, that parent is safe. But those individuals don't have to go to court, right? They send the social worker who signs the report, who represents it in court. Now, this just doesn't happen that first hearing, called the detention hearing. It happens at that next hearing. The one that happens in 30 days, the one that now is going to represent the facts and the truth. But guess what happens at that next hearing? In many cases, it's simply those concerns that were on that first report. It's simply that speculation. It could be a social worker that says, you know what? That parent has taken their kids to the doctor several times. I think they have Munchausen by proxy syndrome. For those of you that aren't aware, it's a rare condition, Munchausen by proxy syndrome. It's where a caretaker or a parent, for reasons of attention, will fabricate or create symptoms in a child. And then they take them dozens and dozens of times. Well, the social worker may have heard or read a parent took their child 2 or 3 times, and they disagreed with the first finding, so they went for a second opinion, maybe a third. Oh my goodness, I think we have Munchausen. I'm going to add that to the list of concerns. Or maybe there was a driving under the influence, or a charge of being under the influence, maybe a couple of years ago. Okay, we've got a drug problem. We're going to add that to the list. So before long, in that next hearing, you could see that list of concerns kind of grow. Because sadly, the purpose isn't to really uncover and find out if there was any legitimate basis to those concerns, if there was any real evidence to support those concerns. The purpose of that next hearing is to make sure that they can sustain those allegations. Make sure they stick. Because the concern is, well, we want to make sure we look consistent in court and not foolish, because we did take children after all, and we did recommend, and we do have those original concerns. So that second hearing, that other report that's going to be more comprehensive and uncover the truth, is simply the sequel to the first report and the concerns. And the children are still separated. And the parents are still not sleeping. Because after all, the kids haven't even gone to sitters very much. And I'm seeing them once an hour. Probably in a 10 by 10 room with a chair and a desk. And somebody monitoring my visit. Because after all, there's concerns about me. There might be something wrong with me as a caretaker. And they're monitoring the visits. And I'm wondering, what's going on? How could this happen? In our system, in our dependency court system, in child protective services, the criteria that's actually required by court that's used oftentimes has little to do with evidence, little to do with proof. I've worked in the system, arguably the largest CPS agency in the world, Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services. They have an average of 35 to 40,000 children in foster placement, out-of-home placement. I've heard story after story for almost 2 decades of family members, of parents that say, what did I do? Maybe we had some issues, maybe we're having some problems, but that made me unfit, and it made it okay to remove the children or deny placement with the relatives. The story you heard about Fox, I've gotten to know over the last few days. I've had several conversations. I'm also a licensed clinician of many years. And if you had conversations with Fox, you'd ask yourself, why can't she have her grandchildren? What's wrong with her? Is she any different than you and I? This is an issue that isn't left of center or right of center. It's not a Republican issue, it's not a Democratic issue. If you get that knock at 11:30 and kids are removed, that pain and anguish won't care if you're left of center or right of center. It will feel the same. I once worked with a family. It was considered a high-profile family. There were 7 kids. One child died, and that's what brought it to the attention of CPS. It was the second of the youngest child. Well, they were concerned that maybe that child died at the hands of the father and his parents where they were living. So, of course, it was cross-reported to law enforcement, as is the case in policy protocol. Law enforcement went out, questioned the father, his parents, all the children. In fact, did it twice at the insistence of CPS, because they were sure that there was foul play, that something happened, that that father and his grandparents, for whatever reason, chose to kill this one child or allow the child to die. Well, after law enforcement did an exhaustive investigation twice, they couldn't do a whole lot. Law enforcement said, nothing here. However, they kept that referral open on the family. 6 months later, they got the knock on the door from CPS, LA County. I'm sorry, we still have concerns. We're still not sure. A child died. We're going to have to remove the children. The rest of the children. Now, mind you, these children were in school, dental records were current, no medical issues or problems. They all had loving relationships with their father and grandparents, and all the kids were removed because some individuals that never met the children, never met the father before, never met the grandparents, decided, well, a child died, and I'm not so sure, we have concerns. All the children went into different foster homes, because it's hard to find foster homes that can take 6 kids. There was a baby among the sibling set. Well, they decided, okay, a baby. Babies are adoptable. you know what, we're going to take the baby and put that child in a pre-adoptive home. Well, there wasn't one in the neighborhood, so they put it into a home that was actually about 65 miles away. But it was an FR case, family reunification case. Kids are supposed to have contact with father because, in theory, the goal is family reunification, put it back together again. But guess what they started to tell the young couple that had the baby in the pre-adoptive home? You know what? Father's never going to get the kid back. Father's always angry and pissed off. I think he's a misogynist. I think he has issue with women. And they kept that baby in that pre-adoptive home. And that young couple, we later discovered, couldn't have children. They were happy to have that baby. And they were getting close to that baby. They were taking the baby to family activities, kind of holding that baby out. At one point, they even decided to get a larger place to live. Because, you know, they had a baby and they would have set up a baby room and all this stuff. That family and those children stayed in the system over a year and a half. I was assigned to the case at one point because, you know, that father, he's really an angry guy. So maybe a guy in the case would help out. So they assigned it to me. I started to read the reports that were being written. And sure enough, father does not appear fit. He has an anger management problem. And I think he has an issue with females, and he has daughters. We're going to add that to the concerns. And we're still not sure what happened to that baby that died. Even though law enforcement decided there was no wrongdoing, no issue, and no evidence of any issue. So I kept reading those reports, and I kept hearing about these horrible stories about this father and what's going on with these kids. I started to observe the family. I started to monitor visits. At first I did it in the office, but the office sucks. It's a 10 by 10 room. These are kids at different ages, developmentally. You can't have a natural visit to find out what this relationships are like, who these people are. I insisted and got in trouble at various points along the case, but we had them in the community. I wanted to see what they were like in their natural environment. Even had the visits at their house. And then brought them into these large conference rooms in the office. And guess what I saw when I had those visits? Wow, these kids are really connected to the father and the grandparents. These are pretty healthy relationships. Wow, they seem really close. In fact, they seem really bonded. And they seem really happy when they see their father and their grandparents. And gosh, they really miss each other because they weren't having any contact with each other. Because remember, they were in separate homes, especially the baby that was separated. Now, after every visit, it was a coincidence that this young couple that had that baby said the baby suddenly contracted these symptoms right after every visit. And they needed to take the baby to a hospital because it was vomiting and it had a temperature spike and all kinds of problems. Well, that went on for several months, that mysteriously the baby somehow had a problem after every visit. Well, I watched every visit, especially the baby. And I saw siblings playing with the baby, father changing diapers, helping to feed the baby, grandparents bringing food, interacting with the children. I saw a normal, functional, healthy family system. And I'm thinking, why did we take the kids in the first place? Well, I had a chance to talk to the previous social worker that was on it before me, a younger social worker, been on the job maybe 3 years. And he said, Jerry, I'm seeing the same thing. And I saw the same thing. But I couldn't really write it all in the report, because you know how they edit our reports. Because the reports need to be consistent with the position taken initially, right? Regardless of the facts, regardless of what's going on, we kept that family separated for over a year and a half. In fact, Even though I made efforts to get the truth into the report, and we social workers after a while learned that we have to use different techniques. We use what I call the cipher method, where we sneak coded language into reports. Hopefully it doesn't get removed. Or maybe we'll hide the language in certain parts of the report. Hopefully it won't be seen, because they're long reports. And if that fails, we try the deep throat method, where we'll call the other attorney anonymously and say, you know what, this is what's really going on. Because otherwise, if you want to say anything that's inconsistent with the position that's taken initially by those ghost authors, it doesn't make it into the report. The people making recommendations are not that social worker. So these reports are going in. Before that family was done with the system, they were returned and detained 3 times. And eventually the court said, you know what, I'm done. Obviously, you're trying to relitigate the initial concern of the death of that sibling that was already proven and decided that there was no wrongdoing, but you were clinging to that to build a case, and you've kept these children away from their family system for almost 2 years at the point they finally got back. Now, as a clinician, as a therapist, I saw these kids have incredible levels of anxiety, symptoms, develop depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety concerns disorder and issues, attachment issues. They became parentified. And for those that aren't familiar with that term, is they turn into little parents, especially with their younger siblings. Because now they were afraid that they were with strangers. At one point, they moved one of the older siblings to where the baby was. And this was a real smart sibling. She intentionally sabotaged the placement she was in. She was a holy terror. And she made sure she was going to be moved. And then she said, well, can I be placed with my baby brother? Why did she, a smart girl, oh my goodness, I'll tell you. So she got to the baby brother. Guess what she did when she got there? She went into protective mode. And she started to see how this young couple was getting so attached and becoming bonded themselves. Not because they were bad people. They couldn't have kids. In a pre-adoptive home, they were being told the likelihood that that evil, angry father would never get the kids back. Well, of course, this was going to be my child. So she started to do everything she could to make sure that that baby knew she was still part of the family system. At one point, she would lock herself in the bathroom with the baby. And she wouldn't come out. Now, this drove the foster parents crazy. They weren't sure what to do. And they started to complain. I'm sorry, I don't think we can continue to have this older sibling. That older sibling's being very disruptive in our house. Well, thankfully, it was at this point that the court started to get fed up and see the writing on the wall. And of course, it's hard to see the writing because it doesn't make it into the reports. But it started to become really clear because there was this strange guy named Dominguez that kept putting all these inconsistent facts in the report. And this was very confusing at some point. But then they started to realize, oh my God, what have we done? The kids eventually went back, thankfully. To this day, the kids are still with the father and their grandparents in a healthy family system that loves them, that cares about them. And we've seen this happen over and over again. Because sadly, in CPS, as well as our courts, we don't seem to demand facts. We don't seem to be that concerned about the truth anymore. We all want kids safe. Nobody wants a child abused. Nobody wants a child seriously neglected. But somehow, somewhere along the way, we lost our way. And we're now finding situations where ghost authors are making recommendations and the courts are okay with those recommendations without demanding truth, without demanding actual facts. And we're seeing families ripped apart and harmed are loving family members that may be going through tremendous loss themselves, only to have a system come in and take what losses are going through and add serious insult to injury, to take an already complex, difficult situation and then nail that last nail in the coffin, instead of reaching out to help families. I also had a chance to work in the system long enough to experience a program that did something really strange. A program that actually invited the family and the community into the decision-making process. I mean, this was bizarre. I had never experienced this in a system that thrived on power and control as a way of addressing these complex issues. This program actually decided, you know what? Maybe families are the best guide for their own. Maybe they're actually the experts about themselves. Wow, what a concept. Maybe we should invite them into the process before we make a decision. There was a program called Family Group Decision Making. It was a conference model. In this conference model, we would actually invite the entire family when they were available, not during the day, because after all, we want folks to work, right? We would do these in the evening or on weekends. And why would we come to the office in those 10 by 10 rooms? I don't think so. We did these in the community, at churches, at parks, at houses, the back of my car, wherever the family felt comfortable. And we said, you know what, family? Can we call all of you together? Family defined as anybody that loves the child, anybody that wants to be a positive part of their welfare, their well-being. We want those people to come to these meetings. And in these meetings, the families got a chance to pick the reason why they were coming. We called it a purpose statement. So that was the focus. Purpose statement, family came together, and in the meeting, we'd have everybody there. I would facilitate, and then we'd ask the family, okay, can you tell us about your family, the strengths of the family? We first want to find out about the strengths. Wow, the strengths? Okay. Well, I'd hear things like, the aunt is very loving, the uncle is a great mechanic, and father is incredibly attentive and really cares about the education. And we'd have all the family members, the relatives, the minister, the priest, the rabbi, talk about the strengths of the family. Because after all, isn't that how we deal with our issues in life? We rely on our strengths to deal with life challenges. Human Beings 101. The children were present. Of course they were present. Oftentimes in this situation, children are absolutely ignored. They almost disappear in the struggle between the adversarial parties in the court system, or the adversarial nature that absolutely takes place between family and the system. But in this conference model, children were there, and they got a chance to share their strengths about their family. Oh, I really love my dad because I really love my mom. And a lot of times we have paternal and maternal sides. Well, as is true in life, sometimes maternal and paternal aren't getting along very well. But we had all the kids there. So the kids were saying really nice things about both sides. It encouraged both sides to start to say nice things. Because after all, the kids are listening. And oh my goodness, talk about a powerful voice when the kids start to talk about how they feel and what they're experiencing. So we hear the strengths. And after we get all the strengths, then we hear the concerns from the family. Okay, what are your issues and concerns about the reason why you're here, the purpose statement, about child safety and welfare? What do you think, family? What's going on? And we tried to help the family share the concerns in the way that we could all listen to it. We didn't want names, we didn't want examples, we wanted those issues underneath the names and examples. Well, we're concerned that we want the caretakers maybe to be clean and sober. That we want mother to have more help because mother's going through a really hard time economically. We get all the concerns, we put them on an easel as well as the strengths. And then of course the agency representative would share the agency concerns. But remember, This was a family meeting at a family home in a lot of cases. So that social worker, oh my goodness, they were in the family environment, allowed and privileged to be part of the family experience. So as a facilitator, I of course had the representative from the agency share their concerns. And oh my goodness, this is where we did most of our work. Because invariably the social worker would say, you know what? I want to see parenting, counseling, domestic violence, and I think there's a drug issue, and I would stop them really quickly and say, with all due respect, can you kind of set down the laundry list and just share the concerns underneath it? You know, this gives the family a chance to talk about it, to consider the concerns. You know, and it gives them a chance to think about what makes sense to them to address those concerns. So we'd get the agency concerns, and then we had all the family concerns, and then we moved into the second phase, private time. Why was it called private time? All the professionals exited. Now it's just the family. With the easels of their concerns, the agency concerns. Now the family had a chance to talk privately about those personal and intimate issues that nobody should be privy to unless they have permission from the family. So the family would discuss the concerns. And they would have a little easel that said who, what, where, when. Because now their task and their responsibility was to decide, well, what are we going to do, family? My friends, my neighbors, my minister, my rabbi. What do you think we should do to address these concerns? And they would craft a plan. Who, what, where, when. Based on the concerns driven by their purpose statement. Sometimes that private time would take 20 minutes. Sometimes it would take 3 hours. Or maybe I'd come back the next day. Because I didn't rush the family. After all, this had to do with the potential removal of a child. And how that child is going to be reintroduced or reunified with their family. So we didn't rush. These conferences ran from anywhere from 4 to 6 hours on average. We provided a light meal. Because after all, it crossed a meal line. And there's something magical that happens when you put food between people. Breaking bread and food is absolutely critical in our cultures. All of our cultures. So we provided a light meal. During the first part of the private phase, and I made sure they were never disturbed, you might hear some sounds. We call that the storming phase. This is where the family themselves were sharing their passionate feelings about what was going on, or each other. But when they were done, almost without exception, they came out with a plan, their plan, that made sense to them, that was almost more stringent and demanding than the social worker plan. And guess what? They added a few other things. Why? Because the family knows themselves. They are, in fact, the best expert about themselves. So in the last phase, we would come together again. And we'd take this plan, and then we would show it to the agency representative. Here's what the family would like to do, based on all the concerns. This is the plan they think makes the most sense. Maybe it had some of those traditional things like counseling, or maybe it had some other things. You know what? We're going to have Aunt Teresa move into the house for 6 months and lend more support. Because she's really good with the kids. She's raised about 4 or 5. She's available, and she wants to help. And she's part of the family. Or they'd recommend some other things that the social worker couldn't possibly think of. And the social worker would scratch her head going, oh my God, wow, I had no idea. Well, it's because we never asked. So this plan went straight to court. It didn't go to a ghost author. It wasn't censored. It didn't go through any other layers of approval. It went straight to court. One of the first times, one of the only times, the court got to see exactly what the family system wanted to do in a way that made sense to them. I had the privilege and honor of being a part of over 1,200 of these family group decision-making meetings. It is the only program in my knowledge, or anybody I've known in the system, past or present, where the family actually had an opportunity make a decision based on something that made sense to their family, created by the family system. They were given both the responsibility and empowered to take care of their own. It was the only program that's ever done that. We have these other meetings now we call TDMs. It's an effort to bring in family. They're about an hour to an hour and a half. They're held in the offices, and by the way, it's almost an hour and a half, so we gotta speed this up. And it's during the day, so not too many family members can come because people work, go to school, have caretaker responsibilities, but they get a few people in, and they're sitting down with a supervisor, social worker, facilitator, and other agency representatives. And in theory, that's supposed to be an attempt to engage family and level the playing field. But if you can picture a scene with a few family members, with a supervisor, social worker, facilitator, and other professionals not part of the family, and the few family members that are there, probably one of the caretakers, one of the parents, thinking, oh my God, I'm kind of feeling a little bit outnumbered. Is this really a level playing field? And if I disagree, am I going to appear angry, uncooperative? So while those TDMs are a good attempt, well-intentioned, they're not a family group decision-making meeting. And that's part of the problem. Is there such a lack of transparency in that initial decision when a child is removed, and then when that custody is made permanent at that next hearing, the children can end up in the system for 1 year to 2 years with families desperate for any kind of help and support to somehow have those children returned. And by that time, it's almost too late after that first hearing. And families grieve and wonder, well, how do I change this? How could this happen? And we've seen that happen over and over again. That's why we're here today. It's not a Democrat issue, it's not a Republican issue, it's a moral issue. And it touches all of us. I don't care if you haven't had children. You were a child. Nephews, nieces, cousins, neighbors, friends. We need CPS. We just need it to be functional, to make the right decisions when kids are being harmed. But not to do the harm. Not to ravage a family that loves and cares about their children. We have to make systemic changes. We have to correct the failures and the obstacles that are resulting in incredible pain and anguish to a growing number of families that we're seeing every day throughout the state and the country. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. Our other speakers are going to talk about this.
Okay, we're going to have Robert talk next, and then after Robert's talked, we will have a short intermission. So please come up.
Where to start? First I want to apologize. When this is over, I'm going to run out of here. I have to be in Ukiah at 8 o'clock in the morning for depositions. And I'm on a motorcycle tonight, but I'm not complaining about that. That's fantastic. I love that. And I need somebody to tell me when I'm supposed to stop, because I got to be honest with you people, I could rattle on about the shit that I have seen for days on end. And I am not kidding you. And Carin and I, left to use the vernacular, could fill one day with just the vernacular. And all that I say to you, I will not fully convey it. It's like when you never had kids, and you tell people that you have had a kid, you tell people, oh, this is wonderful, my God, it's so great, you know, and they say, oh, I'm sure it is, I get it. And then you find out they don't get it until they have a kid. It's just like that. So I don't know how succinct I'm gonna be. It really is something that I do hate the system. I do think it needs to be blown up. I often say that the worst things that could happen to CPS is that I win the lottery or I get diagnosed with a terminal illness. Because I don't know what I'm capable of. If you've seen the heartache that I have seen, if you've seen the insanity that I have seen, and Carin has seen, and Jerry has seen, it would blow your mind. So I've been doing it about 22 years been doing the juvenile dependency work. That's when they actually take the kids and you're in the state court. And then about 15 years ago, 16 years ago, in one of my exceptionally insane removals, my client called me and told me, did you know that you can sue them for this? And I said, well, I mean, I think I heard that, but don't they have immunities? And she said, well, I have this case here, and they sued them and they sued the crap out of them. And well, send me the case, and I contacted the attorney who was the lead attorney on that, this gentleman named Donnie Cox, and we kindred spirits. For those who believe in a higher power or purpose, I know that he put us together, and the very small squad of attorneys in the state that sue Child Protective Services, that there is literally about 10 of us. And Carin's husband is kind of a new to the fold, but maybe there's 11. And I'm serious, that's it. There's a few people who go out and make mistakes and muddy our pool and screw things up once in a while, but people know what they're doing. There's about 10 of us. So I field about 5 to 15 calls a week at my office from people, and I don't advertise. I have a website, that's it. They've read maybe a appellate opinion that I've handled at my office or something like that, but 5 to 15 a week, or other attorneys are referring them. I even get referrals from social workers on the side who are telling the people, you gotta call Robert Powell. You're getting screwed, you gotta call him. Don't tell him I sent you. You know, because like he said, and a lot of his book is about something that I really didn't appreciate until I read Jerry's book and met Jerry, and that is the traumatization that the social workers are going through when they can't do their work. And of course, like all groups of people, there's good and bad, and sadly I think most are bad, but that's because they're put under this gun of, you know, do what we want you to do and not what should be done, what you know morally should be done. So it's been quite an interesting 15 years suing them, as well as working in the juvenile courts. And I'm trying to come with some practical things to let you know about. One of the things I wanted to tell you about was who are the primary targets of Child Protective Services. And make no doubt about it, it's the poor, first of all. Okay? Because the poor can't fight back. They're going to get the court-appointed attorneys who are going to say, submit. I think that's the training they get. Say submit. Submit to the pleading. Submit to the jurisdiction, whatever. You'll get your kids back sooner. You will hear these words over and over again. You'll hear the words flat affect because you're emotionally drained. They've taken your children. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you're losing weight, you can't focus. Now you have a flat affect. Okay? Then when they're wanting to rip you apart, you'll hear the words, the relationship is like that of an ant. I don't know how many times I've read that. It's insane. It is insane. So anyway, the poor is number one. They're going to be, the children of color was a study that was done years ago, and the black Americans are way overrepresented in the social services system. Another group that gets caught up in it a lot is those with special needs children. And the way that happens is, in order to get those benefits that they need to try and help their child survive and become, you know, a productive member of society, sometimes you get some very vocal, and I guess one could say vitriolic mothers or fathers who are pushing them and saying, well, you know, here in this it says you're supposed to do this. School don't like that. They don't like being told what to do, or, you know, they don't like having to deal with the kid who pisses his pants or whatever his deal is. Sooner or later, you get the CPS referral. You've pushed too hard. You've pissed off the wrong person, and it just goes from there. And like Jerry said, and the word that is legally is used is prima facie. If they put enough crap in here, the court is got to assume it is true. By statute, they are to assume that's true. It doesn't matter that none of it's true, or half of it's false, or they've left out some really big ones. That's the way it's going to work, and you're in, and they're keeping your kid. This is a quote on this subject of how they keep kids from a law review article that I read years ago, and I've kept it ever since, because I think it summarizes the real problem. This is from Rescuing Children from Abusive Parents, the constitutional value of pre-deprivation process. A large part of what I do when I'm suing them in federal court is about the fact that they've removed them without a warrant. In a minute I'll talk about what happened after I sued enough of them that they were starting to get warrants, and what happened was exactly what I expected to have happen. In any event, what this article says, this is a Florida, it's talking about Florida at this point. It says, During one 15-month period in 1999 through 2000, for example, 2,857 children were summarily rescued by Florida officials. Now he's using summarily rescued, what he means is they were taken. He's got some sarcasm, I like him. Only 86 of those children, approximately 3%, were returned to their parents within 24 hours. Because some of those returns resulted from unilateral agency decisions, that's that rare occasion where somebody goes, you really screwed up, you better give those kids back. But if you include that a couple of those were from agency decisions, DCSF's success rate under Florida's post-deprivation review, meaning you get court after we've taken your children, closely approached 98%. Remarkable as it may sound, Florida's judges found the DCF correctly estimated probable cause in 98 out of every 100 cases. What in human affairs has a 98% success rate? To me, that just sums it up. That's what we're dealing with. In any event, another major target is if you have teenage daughters, and this is not sexist, this is based on 22 years of experience, ladies and gentlemen. Children, as you know, go through tremendous hormonal changes, and I'm not referring to any daughter anywhere. I'm talking about daughters of divided families with a new stepdad. That is a real common target. And I see it all the time, and I meant to bring my collection of polygraphs. When a case comes to me with a sex abuse allegation, for my own personal, my own rules, my own morals, I ask the person, will you take a polygraph for me? And they, absolutely, absolutely. And I am holding approximately 26 polygraphs, I've been doing this for a long time, of people who were accused, not always by the child, it could have been by a doctor or somebody else. This guy did sex abuse. Passed every one of them. I have another like 14 or 15 that are other kind of polygraph issues, but in all the polygraphs I've ever taken that went to, was in CPS court, only one question of there's 4 questions per test that you can ask, was ever, did a guy lie about something that was something minor? And yet, go to CPS court and lose pretty much every time. In fact, when I consider myself one of the best attorneys in California doing this, and I consider that woman over there one of the very best attorneys in California that does this in terms of juvenile dependency work. And I have to tell people, my win rate in terms of an outright dismissal is like 15–20%. If you came to me with your medical malpractice case, or your auto accident case, or your whatever case, and I told you that, you should probably jump up and run. That's how much you win? 15–20%? But that's how much I win. And I've had a presiding judge of a juvenile court say, this guy's one of the best attorneys in the state, in court, on the record. But that's the reality. There's no winning there. The whole damn thing is a sorority, and the whole damn thing is a fraternity. I have sat at counsel's table with my elbows on the crumbs of a little lunch soiree that they had between my morning session of trial and my afternoon session of trial, in which all of the attorneys and the judge sat in there and had a buffet. That's one of the problems with the system. I jumped to my problems with the system list. Who's going to flag me when I'm getting near the end? Because I'm starting to get pissed. I ain't kidding you. It gets me pissed. You'll let me know? Okay. Another major group that you need to be careful is if you're a homeschooler. God, do they hate that. They can't get to your kid. They hate that. They go to the schools now and the teachers, oh, sure. Because you know why? Because the teachers go to these seminars put on by these bastards, and they tell them, if you don't, let us in, or if you don't report abuse, then you could be found liable, right? Of course, there's been like 4 prosecutions for that in the whole history of the mandated reporting law. But the poor people, they're scared, so they call it a slight bruise or anything, And once you're in, I'm telling you, it's like a string on a sweater. The sweater, you're in. So the homeschoolers, they hate that, so they'll come after you more. They'll find a way. The child with chronic health problems, that goes to that Munchausen by proxy thing. If you've got a child with chronic health problems, oh my God, tread carefully. Call us now. Don't wait before you make every move. I swear to God, there are people I would tell them, you need to do everything you can on that computer and figure out everything you can before you ever take that child to a hospital. I have had cases, I don't know how many, it's got to be 5 or 6. People take their kid in because they did something they know, like they have a chest cold or they did break a toe or whatever, and then they do a full body scan on a kid and they go, oh, broken rib. And the parent's like, huh? Where the hell I don't know where the hell the broken rib came from. And I'm telling you, these people aren't all lying. They're not all there breaking their kids' ribs. But, and I think Carin might talk on shaken baby syndrome. It's the same problem. I mean, you get into this medical profession, and those people, that they have a God complex. And social workers, no offense. There is a God complex that runs through that crowd that you cannot believe. The root of all evil isn't money, it's power. It's just that money is one of the objects of power. And when you give people this unbridled power over other human beings, and up until the last, say, 10 or 15 years, when me and my colleagues have been suing the crap out of them, they've walked free, it really screws you up. And it goes back to that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we see it. And Carin and we take people in and they read their reports and they go, that's not true. I never said that. And then we have people, therapists tell us, I never told a social worker that. I never did. So there's homeschoolers, child with chronic health problems, someone who goes in with a known injury, and then so some of the problems with the system, the overall problems, is mandated reporting. You got to drop that shit. People are smart enough, well, many people are smart enough to decide when they need to report something or not report something. The problem is that they're scared to death out there, the teachers and the doctors and the nurses, and they're all told that you're a mandated reporter now. And here's the biggest thing. Somebody needs to train these people on a monthly basis of the damage that they are doing to a child, never mind the parents, that they are doing to a child when they remove that child, even from an abusive home. The studies are replete. A child even removed from an abusive home is more likely to be harmed in the care of the state, 40 to 70% by all the studies that are out there so far. Okay? So what the hell are you doing? You're taking this kid, that separation that they feel, that anxiety, it shows up in infants. That case that she put up there about the baby in Sacramento, that's my case. In fact, we just settled that against the county. They'll be paying a tidy $325,003, and we're still going after the cops. What they did was outrageous. That little boy, Sammy, he was about 7 months at the time that they got him back, 6 months by the time he got him back. And he was in the hospital, because he did have a problem, he did need to get taken care of. And when mom returned after being gone for 3 days back to the hospital, the little baby would start to fall asleep. And then he'd look over, like, oh, okay, she's there, good, all right. And he'd do that like 5 or 6 times. Babies, in the cases that I've had, won't let their mother go to the bathroom. They will fall, the mom will come, they're right there. Because in their little minds, my God, look what happened to me. This could happen again. They're traumatized for life, And these things have an anniversary event, strangest thing. About every year, for many, many years, and it could go into their adulthood for all I know, they will have dark days right around that time that happened to them. And you'll wonder why they act out, and they wonder why they feel terrible or depressed or moody. And it turns out, oh yeah, that's when I was taken when I was 10. That's when I was taken when I was 12 or 9, whatever. So the trauma is deep, it's very deep. And if somebody would pound that into their heads repeatedly, I gotta think a few of them would say, oh, let me rethink this, I'm gonna take the kid idea. The fraternity sorority effect, I told you about the court, and let me tell you, the court system is no better. I gotta tell you. Somebody needs to do something about the court system. To have just a judge who's with the same people in the same room every day, then it's supposed to make an unbiased, decision. It's impossible to even believe that anybody thinks that would work. I am disgusted at what I have to put up with judges in the courtrooms. I mean, I'm trying to keep my vernacular down. The lack of independent counsel, the court-appointed attorneys. It's horrific. And anybody who tries to do their job, I was speaking to one who I'm working with in LA now, trying to bring her up on this stuff. And she said that she one time brought her client into the office. And people were looking at her, and she was new, you know, she didn't know any better. She thought she was there to be a zealous advocate like they taught her in law school. And Rachel Raymond, you know her? And the client leaves, and the manager comes. Who was that? Well, that was my client. Well, what was he doing here? What do you mean, what's he doing here? He's my client. He says, this is the law office, I'm a lawyer. I'm going to meet with my client. Appalled that she would take the time to do that. Because here's what happens, and in LA is for sure, they get like 5 minutes, they see those people before they walk in a courtroom about their children, about their life. And they get 5-10 minutes with these people. And the guy's read through some report, half full of crap from a social worker, and half the time they just go along with it. And they're carrying, 50, 75 cases. They don't know what's going on. We had a blue ribbon panel report about 4 years ago put up by the California Supreme Court. Said you got to bring that stuff down. And at that point they were carrying like 150 cases, some of these people. They didn't know where they were coming or going. They didn't know Jill from Janet. Nothing. And this is the representation that they're getting about their children. The confidential courtroom, open that thing up. Crack those doors, get the cameras in there. There are very few cases that occur in those courtrooms that need us not to see them. Sure, there's kids that get sexually abused and stuff like that. In fact, Jerry has something in his book, if you read it, and I do encourage you to get the book, about how, like, I don't remember what his numbers are, but these are mine. About 20-25% of these cases, absolutely, there's not a sane person on earth who wouldn't say, dear God, get that kid out of there, okay? And then there's another 30 that are like, you know, probably we could just fix this if we focus on fixing it and keep the kid intact. And then there's another 25-30% that are like, what the hell are you doing? Like the story he described. What the hell are you doing? Why are you taking these children? So the confidential courtroom allows that to occur. If we open up those doors, and an LA County judge did say he's going to do that, nobody's taking advantage of it, because nobody seems to care until it affects their family. If we do that, that would really help. Take the financial subsidies out of the adoption of children. Take the financial subsidies out of the placement of children with other people. These people get. So you get this poor family, and they're subsisting on, I don't know, some welfare, and maybe there's some total they can come up with $1,000 a month. They're trying to raise 2 kids, and they'll take their 2 kids and maybe they'll separate them, and then they'll give each of the foster parents $650, $750. Gee, Seemed like if we took that 1,000 they already had, we gave them, say, $500. And I know some of you here probably say, well, we shouldn't do that. But dear God, these are children, and it just doesn't make sense to me. Now I give them to a foster parent where they're 40 to 70% more likely to be killed. I'm handling my 3rd dead baby case. You know how many times you can look at pictures of autopsies of dead babies and not just become incensed? This man.
And the money that they get, mind you, there is no auditing. There is no expectation to deliver any proof that any money was spent actually on the child. If they have special needs and mental health issues, they can get as much as $1,300 per kid. And there's no expectation to deliver any accounting of what you spend it on. But we do have a lot of foster parents that live in very large homes, that drive really nice automobiles.
That's very true, because, and then the desire to have a special need, which could be ADHD, everybody's got it, you probably got it, you don't even know. Okay, well, you got it. Now you're gonna get more money. Now you're gonna get more money. So financial subsidies, and you may have all heard about the fact that if they get past a target number, this is amazing. We talk about humans this way. If you get past a target number established on how many kids you adopted out before, then you go past that, now you start getting incentives. We're gonna give you $4,000 per kid over that target number, and if it's a special needs kid, we're gonna give you 6. So there's another reason to have ADHD or something. So that's obviously a problem. Subsidies for having people's families ripped apart. The refusal to place with family members immediately, that's insane. You can't believe it. I had a case where they took this woman's child, and one of the things that they were saying that she had done was she had committed welfare fraud. Well, I guess she had. Then about 13 years prior in the state of Tennessee, and her ex-husband, in an effort to get her in trouble, had dropped off a sofa couch and a couple of end tables and some other piece of furniture, and she neglected to put those on a form. So then they prosecuted that. And now we're standing here 13 years later in the court, and the judge is looking at him and going, is this really, what does this have to do with she parented her children that she, okay, committed welfare fraud 13 years ago in Tennessee. Okay, Your Honor, so we'll take it out. You took it out. Before the trial is over, Your Honor, we want to amend to put that back in. Are you? You know what, me? So the craziness is incredible. And finally, the appellate courts. So check it out, we have all these statutes that say how fast this stuff should happen when you get to these juvenile court systems, because it's a liberty interest, it's our bloody children. Somebody seemed to have recognized that, put it in the law. I think it's supposed to have a detention hearing within 3 days, okay? If you contest that you want your kid back, even if they want to still argue that they need to stick around your family, then you're supposed to have a hearing in 10 court days, okay? If you don't contest, but they are holding on to your child, you're supposed to get your trial in 15 days. I'm not even sure what the 30-day comment was about. In 15 days, you're supposed to have that trial. Well, you know what they do? They put on their little computer system that there's a trial 15 days from now. And you get there, and they say, well, here's the jurisdiction report. Do you agree with it or disagree with it? Because then now we'll set your trial. And then they start the trials, and Carin and I were just talking about this. I've been in LA for what, if you summed up all the total of the time, it was probably 12 hours, but it took me like 7 trips to LA, sitting in the lobby for 2 to 3 hours at a time to get my 45 minutes to have these people trial. And you go to the appellate courts and you say, where the hell is my due process? And they say, that's not, that's not substantive, that's not jurisdictional. Well, what the hell do we have the statute for? Why don't we just say, wait, whenever you get around to it, 5 minutes. All right, as I said, it really does get my blood boiling. I hope it doesn't happen to any of you, because when they take that child, let me tell you, they didn't just take that child, they didn't just mess up that family, they messed up that child's friends. Where's Jimmy? Where's Jimmy? Well, we don't know where Jimmy is, we don't know when I'll be back. They messed up the aunts, they messed up the nephews, they messed up the cousins, they messed up the grandparents. They've hit multiple levels. His baseball team, his swim team. It is so damaging to do what they do, and to do it with such arrogance and such ignorance is unacceptable, and we need somebody to do something. Unfortunately, I've chosen the path, one path. I'm going to sue the shit out of them. That's all I have time. Keep doing it. One final thing. I mentioned that they do it without warrants, and that's how most of my cases make them attractive. We take, I swear, maybe 1 a month on average, because they're a big investment. So we take it because they did it without a warrant. It was beyond stupid. So we sue them for a while, and then they start getting warrants. And as soon as it started happening, I said to my buddy Donnie, you know what's going to happen? Those lies that we see in that detention report when we show up the first thing in court, those are going to show up in the warrant. In the warrant application that they get to give to the judge that we don't ever get to see anyway before they get the warrant. Come take the kid. Sure enough. It's exactly what happened. Now the lie, and of course now, since I don't know, there's nobody looking over their shoulder, the lies are incredible. I just had a case in Sacramento, we just settled it. Sacramento will be paying $600,000 for what they did. They should pay a hell of a lot more. And in the warrant application, this social worker actually had put some of the good positive things about these parents who, long story short, that they're angels on earth. And the county council went and took out all the good things about the parents. And if you read the one that they left, it sounded pretty bad. But if you knew that in reality, these people had adopted 4 special needs children themselves, and had run a program out of their home for years, to which other agencies would refer children with severe behavioral and emotional disturbance disorders. You would never know that from reading this warrant application. You would think these were a couple of people who just basically beat children and hold them on the ground. So, I'm going to go. Thank you very much. I do have to get back over to the road. Thank you.
So we're going to take a 5-minute break. There are snacks back there. Please go to the window. Gail has a sign-up sheet. Then we'll listen to Carin, and then we'll allow you to ask your questions. Please take your seats so we can get started again.
Are you interested in being contacted about CPS? I got a flat on
Okay, we have one more speaker, and we're going to be sending around a sign-up sheet. I wanted to let everybody know without a doubt that I am in this for very, very selfish reasons. Number one, I'm fighting tooth and nail to get my granddaughter back. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I just, like everyone else, you get to a point where you just have to leave it in the hands of a higher power. But that is my first and foremost reason, is to get my granddaughter back. The second reason is I never, ever want this to happen to another child, children, or family. Ever, ever again. So the sign-up sheet is for coalitions, and if you want to be on the legislative drafting committee and work with some politicians and some really smart lawyers like we've had here tonight, please do, because the power is in the number of the people, and we are the most committed members of this community. Obviously, you're here tonight. So I want to turn the last part of this meeting over to Carin Johnson.
Good evening. I did my calculations. I've been doing this for 21 years. Bob is 22. And when I was in law school, I knew that I wanted to help people that didn't have a voice, but I wasn't quite sure what that would be. So naturally, I went to criminal defense work, and I did some CPS work right when I started. Super brand new. But I didn't realize when I was doing CPS work in the beginning that I was really helping those who didn't have a voice, because I believe the whole CPS principle that they're there to help. So in my criminal defense work, I did that for many years along with CPS, and now all I do is CPS, and it's because it really is my passion. I love it. And I thought back to law school, and I realized I took a juvenile law class when I was in law school. Never quite put this together. But it was always me versus the entire classroom. And I was always the one that disagreed with the group, the mass. The teacher loved me, but I feel like that's what I'm still doing today. I'm the one, along with Bob, along with Jerry, fighting the mass mentality. And I'm still doing it today. I absolutely love it. I don't care what they think about it. I know I'm doing the right thing. So it's what I get up every day to do. I don't think I even have a criminal defense case left. It's just all CPS work. Today on the radio a lot of times, or I think sometimes on milk cartons, you'll see advertisements for foster care. Like CPS, you hear these things on the radio. How they're there to help these families. And I had my kids in my car, taking them all home from school, and one of these advertisements came up on the radio about foster care and CPS and all the goodness and everything. And my kids were like, uh-oh. And I hear this voice. It was a little kid saying, "I miss my home," and another little kid saying, "I miss my pillow." And it was about donating some things to give to these children in foster care. So when they said, "I miss my home and I miss my pillow," I see my kids. I see them over there. And I go, "Then give them back to their parents." So my kids, they hear this all the time. I do it all day long. They hear me in the kitchen when I come home from work, talking about the injustice, the flawed logic, all the time. So who knows what my kids will end up doing, but they're definitely going to be outspoken. So right now I just want to give a little heads up on the state of affairs in the court system. It's absolutely dismal. There is nothing good to say about what I see every single day in the courtroom. I practice CPS cases all over the state of California. I have a case in Redding, I've got a case in San Diego, I've got cases all over the place. And it's basically the same everywhere. It's attorneys that are paid by, some still paid on the county budget, some are paid by these contract organizations that lowball a number, hire very few lawyers to run a ton of cases through. They pay them, I don't think the pay is that bad, but I'll tell you one thing, they don't return phone calls, they don't fight their cases, they don't read their cases, they don't prepare, they don't fight, they don't go to trial. Once in a while, you'll see one of these lawyers go to trial, but it's really, really rare. And you might say, well, do you have to go to trial? Frankly, the only time you're ever going to get the truth out about what's going on, the truth behind that report full of facts that aren't true and things that people didn't say and assessments about people that are true, is to go to trial. Put the social worker on the stand. Call an expert. You'll see a whole different scenario. I promise. I promise. It's not what they have in the report. It's completely different. But, you know, I've just met Jerry like a couple days ago, actually, through a radio station, and I get to see him live, which is awesome. I'm so happy to be in his presence. And Bob Powell, we actually have a case together right now. He's awesome, and he sees things kind of the way I do. And, you know, if you want to get the truth out, you have to go to trial. So, but there's only a few lawyers that, you know, will do it, or even have the courage to do it, or know how to try a case. So it's this, you know, little dot in a mass, right? This little voice in a mass of county attorneys that submit to petitions and say, we'll just submit to the report, but sir, it's incorrect. We'll talk about that later, client. We'll talk about that later. Just, you know, go along with the program. Well, there is no talking about it later. They don't return their phone calls. There's no talking about it later. You're stuck. You are who they say you are. You did what they said you did, and you better correct it. That is the state of affairs. I see it everywhere. It's absolutely disgusting. I sit in courtrooms, and I'm just back there shaking my head, doing this. Oh my God, did that guy really say that? You know, doing this in court. So I have a really cool story, though. A really cool story. So before I tell the story, I want to tell you some principles. So when CPS takes the children from the family for whatever they did or didn't do, okay, I see all over the state that the court will order no visitation for the parent and the child. 0. Take the kid or the kids and no visitation. No visitation until we get some allegations for the jurisdictional stage. No visitation until we get you to submit to whatever it is that you did wrong. That to me is unfathomable. It's horrible. It's cruel. It's sickening. It makes me sick. So I had a case where a client came to me, had a really good lawyer, but he didn't know juvenile dependency that well. So they came to me and hired me to help his lawyer. And he told me that he hadn't seen his kids in 6 months. And I said, what do you mean you haven't seen your kid in 6 months? They won't let me see my kids. I'm like, what? That's illegal. It is? Yeah. Yes. That's illegal. So I filed a motion, went to court, and the judge agreed with me. He was an intelligent judge. And no one opposed my motion. Nobody opposed they all just sat there. Because they all knew it to be true. But they all just sat there. And I was like, Why didn't somebody say something? You, county council, why didn't you speak up and tell the court what the law was? Because I will actually talk to them like that, because that's just how I am. Why didn't you speak up about this? You don't have any objection? Why didn't somebody say something to the judge earlier? He was kind of a new judge in the area, this area of law, and they just let it happen. Who does that? Who just sits there and lets that happen? That to me is completely disgusting. So, parents have a fundamental right to parent. Children have a fundamental right to be parented by their parents. Those are fundamental rights. A lot of lawyers and judges don't even know that. So, this is my story. It's really good. Okay. So the other day, one of the county, well, it's like a contract lawyer for a county, was sick, and she's a friend of mine from doing private practice. Now she does county stuff, or she's on a contract, and she was making her first appearance for another attorney who had to get off the case. So anyway, she goes, "I'm sick, can you appear for me on this county case? You know, I know you're a private lawyer or whatever, appear for me on this because I'm sick." Well, I was there anyway, and I said, "Of course, sure. Sure, I can do this stuff in my sleep, I'll appear for you." So I appear, and I appear and I'm representing the minors. Yes, okay. I am now in a position, a great position, that if anybody's messing up, I'm representing the minors. I'm the minor's voice. Okay, I get to be the minor's voice. So, they call the case and they agree to some settlement. The father agrees to some settlement, but I'm the minor's attorney. I have anything to say about that. And the judge said, "Okay, well, so there's no visitation in this case. So is the no visitation order still in effect?" And I said, "Excuse me, no visitation for the minors and the father?" "Well, I object. I'm recommending visitation. I'm requesting that the court order visitation for these minors and their father." And they said, "Oh, well, do anybody object to that?" And I'm ready to say, launch into my fundamental right argument. Nobody says anything. So the dad looks over and was like, "Who is that?" And I was like, yeah, I want visitation, and I want phone calls, and he should have the ability to send his children cards and letters. That's what I like. Because I'm minors counsel today. That's what they should do every single time they go to court. But I had that opportunity, and I was running with it, and nobody was objecting. Because if they did, I would have won the argument if they tried to object to me anyway. So I helped these two little children, 5 and 8 years old, who haven't seen their dad, see their dad again. And if he messed up, he's dealing with it. But what about the children? These poor little children haven't seen their dad. So I was extremely excited. It was one of the best days I've had in so long because I could be the voice. So I am preparing a document to slip under the chamber's door anonymously. And it's going to have the law. Okay? Okay, you have to make sure there's visitation. It's the law. I'm going to make it a simple document, larger print, super sweet, and just slip it under the door. Wear gloves. Wear gloves. No, actually, I hope they know who put it under the door. I'm okay if they know who put it under the door, frankly. I do a lot of pretty extreme cases like shaken baby and broken bone cases. So Bob had touched on that earlier that, what do you mean broken rib? I can't tell you how many times I see that. What? Broken leg? Well, you are now a child abuser. You are a child abuser. That baby is immobile and his leg is broken. You broke it. No, I didn't break it. There's no bruising. There's nope, I've been with people 24 hours, no, you broke the baby's leg. You did it, and we're taking the child from you. Well, there must be some kind of metabolic something going on here. I didn't do it. Oh, you are an abuser. See you later. So, I had a case, well, one story, down in San Diego, where my client was represented by somebody that had no idea what they were doing, nor did they understand. So they had this attorney call me, and he says, well, how am I supposed to defend this case? And I said, well, you're kind of looking at it from the wrong perspective. You're looking at the broken bone from the outside in. You got to look at it from the inside out. What's going on with the bone? What? What do you mean? It's broken. No. And I offered to help him and give him all the scientific articles and stuff for free to help this poor mother. Well, he never called me back. So mom got enough money to fly me down there and try the case. That lawyer was out, and I was in. And she hired me actually after the first day of trial and got rid of him and had me come in on day 2 of trial. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll come in. I can do it. So, fly me down there. So I came in, he's out, I'm in. The judge was very mad. I got yelled at for 4 days by the judge, but I kept, I'm like, okay, are you done yelling? Because I have another question. So he just kept yelling and yelling. So while trial was going on, it was a 5-day trial, we spent all night in the hotel room going through all of the medical records. The prior attorney had it for 10 months. I had it for 2 days at this point. And we found this pica notation in the medical records. It was pica. Because I'm like, why didn't anybody take a vitamin D test? Well, guess what? In pica, somebody had told the doctor that they took the wrong test, get the blood from the lab, and run the proper vitamin D test. Pica. I find that we call the lab where the blood is. They're doing this whole administrative, 7 days, you have to fill out a form. I'm like, not good enough. So we know that there was a test result, and we know it must have come back to the hospital. So forget the blood lab, go to the hospital, the results are there. So I send my client, we're not in trial till 1:30 that day. I'm like, go down there, wear pink, look really innocent, act like a scared mom, and you just want someone to help you, and don't be all smart and demanding, because she was very intelligent. I go, act all sweet and cute, and just ask someone to help you. She's like, got it. I'm like, okay. So she gets into the hospital, sweet and undemanding and darling, and after breaking 3 security codes in the computer system that they had never seen before, like, why is there another security code? Well, this is weird, Stacy, look at this. They break through 3 of them. Vitamin D test. The child had a metabolic bone issue. The whole time. The kid had an extremely low vitamin D level, which made the baby's bones susceptible to breakage from normal handling. Okay, now, that was day 3. Get yelled at for 2 more days. I spring it on their doctor expert on the stand. She says she's wrong. What happens? Okay, now we've heard a few hours of CPS stories. What happens? I lose. Really? You're ruling against me? But she said she was wrong. I lose. That's CPS court for you. Their expert said she was wrong. I lose. I'm in CPS court, folks. Okay? When Bob said the best lawyers, you have a 10, 15, 20% win rate, I lost. I lost that case. Then I appealed it to the 4th District Division 1 and got a unanimous reversal. But those are the lengths that you have to go. It's extreme. It's insane. That's a true story. That's a true story. This is my client's first little baby. This is a true story. I've been blessed with being able to work with experts from all over the country and in Canada who I've used in trials. They're amazing. I've learned the science. I've talked to them. I won't put them on the stand unless I've looked at them in the eyes first. So I'll fly to Chicago, I'll fly to Canada, wherever. I want to look at them in the eye and talk about the case first with them and get the science right. And then I'll put them on the stand. And I'm probably one of the only, I don't know if Bob does it, but I know they say I'm the only attorney that ever does that. Because I want to know who they are, and I want to ask them tough questions, and I want to know the science. So I work with these experts all over the country. And they come, they're fantastic. They come and help me try these cases and win these cases. And oh, you'll see today I brought a flyer about some of the cases that I do. This is kind of my form of advertisement, but it talks about shaken baby syndrome, which is now called abusive head trauma. Because shaken baby syndrome got a bad name because it was debunked. And just like CPS, they hate when I call them CPS. Their name got, CPS got a bad name, so now they're CFS. They're Children and Family Services. Because Child Protective Services got a bad name. So I always call them CPS, because I hate that. It makes me brings me joy. There was, and this is a little off topic, but well, wait, before I go to that, I'll tell you another story where I had a wonderful mom up in California, and she was represented by some really whacked out lawyer. I don't know what he was doing, but she found me. She drove several hours to get to my office. She told me her story. She was about to lose her child. She did everything they asked her to. She did everything they asked her to. Oh, they were on the fast track to taking that kid from her. Adoption, you're done. So she'd done everything. So I got hired on the case, and the only thing that they could use against her, I guess, like the lie they could make up against her, is that when she went to visit her child, they could lie about how she presented and what she said, okay? They could lie about that because she's defenseless. She doesn't have a witness. She's defenseless. They could lie. It's her word against theirs, and the court will believe theirs. All the other people, witnesses, therapists, whatever, parenting courses, she's wonderful. But the part where she was not armed was this visit that she would have in their little room. So I said, right there, that's where we have to defeat them. And I call this, I'm writing a book as well, and this is the chapter I call The Psychology of a Social Worker. You have to understand, it's like a chess game, what are they doing? So I said, right there, that's their opportunity to lie about you. So she'd go to visits, and my client had, sometimes she'd speak slow, or when she'd talk, her eyes would close, and then she'd open them. It was just a neurological thing. But they said, oh, you're under the influence. You're under the influence. Mom showed up under the influence. Mom's out of it. So I said, this is what they're doing. So after every visit, I want you to go down to the clinic, take a drug test. So after every visit, you go down, take a drug test, and we pile them up, all the drug tests. And then when we had our hearing, here comes the report. Yeah, mom did parenting, mom did individual therapy, she's doing really great, mom's got housing, mom's doing great. But, it's unfortunate because she'll show up to the visit, under the influence, or she's on something. Oh, really? Really? Okay. So I set for trial, and when the trial began, I laid out in front of the judge, the evidence will show all the drug tests after every single visit. I go, that's what the evidence is going to show. My client got her kid back. And the judge's jaw was on the ground. She couldn't believe it. I'm like, do you want to go to trial or do you want to give my client her kid back? They gave my client her kid back. So sometimes you have to be really smart about how you deal with these cases. Okay, I already knew what was going to happen. They were going to write a report, yeah, whatever. And if I gave them the drug tests in advance, they would just find another reason not to give the child back to her. So I held my card. I'm like, tell my client, just hold on. Just, I know it really sucks. I know, but just hold on. And it worked. Sometimes, wait, what do I want to talk about? I've had clients come to me that attorneys have told them, you know, just divorce your husband and admit to it. What? Just admit to it, divorce your husband. It's the only way you're going to get out of this. They come to me and I'm like, what? So, you know, the option is to fight. So on that particular case, that's what we did. I didn't even have to do my closing argument. The judge just said, case over. Case dismissed. And her prior lawyer told her to admit it and divorce her husband. So that family is still intact. They're a beautiful family, and I actually talk to them all the time. I'm coming down on minutes, but I wanted to tell you that after all these years of watching just case after case after case and being disgusted, I start getting cases and I start trying to find a way to help the clients when they're sometimes so far down the road. They come to me, I'm like, what are we going to do, you know? You're so far down the road. And there's a mechanism called a writ of habeas corpus that you can file. And it's to tell the court that their attorney was ineffective in representing them, and that it affected the outcome of their case. I've written several of these. And several times the court will say, yeah, he was ineffective. But he would have lost anyway, so deny. So in 2 weeks, I will be at the 4th District Court of Appeal doing oral arguments in Riverside, forcing the judges, the justices, to explain their logic. Let me get this straight. He was ineffective, but he would have lost anyway. Well, if he was ineffective, how would you have known what he would have said to win? So I'm going to be putting these 3 justices to task on this logic. If you don't know what the good lawyer would have done, how would you have known he would have lost anyway? That is completely illogical. So I can't wait. I got nothing to lose, right? I got nothing to lose. I'm going to put him to the task, and my client is going to love it, and his family's going to be there, and I'm going to put him to the task. I'm not afraid to answer their questions, and I'm not afraid to put him on the spot.
What date is that so we can pray for you?
June 3rd at 1:30 in Riverside, California.
So while we're doing, getting the exit polling.
Oh, the voting day.
Thank you very much.
So folks, how about if you line up over here and ask your questions of our experts? Make sure this one's on.
Carin, is law logic?
Most of law is logic, yes.
But what's the difference between a lawyer and an attorney?
You know, I knew the answer to that. I knew the answer to that. I just actually learned it the other day. I can't remember the answer, but there is a difference.
How do you win the argument in these cases?
How do you win?
Yeah.
You know everything about your listener.
Okay. And what's your personal strategy for taking the yelling by the judge?
I don't have strategy. I just ignore them.
You ignore him. Okay, good. And when's your book out?
Maybe in a year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
It seemed like the case that was featured before you were speaking was key because there was film involved. There was film documenting what was going on. Do parents have a right to film visitations? And if you have a police officer come to your door, do you have a right to put your camera on? And what would you say if they were challenging that freedom?
Recently, because of a radio spot I did, we brought up the issue of, can a person record information or videotape it in their own home? And you absolutely have that right to do so. Well, there was a reporter that called up my agency and said, well, what is your policy on recording? Well, we're going to look into that. They took about a week and they came back and said, well, we're examining the practice, but as it currently stands, we don't have anything formal in policy. The reality is, and the truth is, and I would highly recommend that you record everything. And that even when they ask you to interview their child privately, you can insist on having another person present. You don't have to allow any human being to interview your child privately. Now, if you happen to be named in the referral, it may not be you, but you can have somebody else. So you can absolutely record. You can simply inform them, well, if you'd like to talk to me in my home, I am comfortable using a recording device. I am now informing you. And they cannot tell you that you don't have the right to be recorded. You absolutely have the right to record it. And I would highly recommend never speaking to anybody from the department or the system without recording it. If they're a good social worker, and many are good, they won't mind. But if there's someone that may have other issues, may lack experience, or may feel that, you know what, they've been told that, well, we already know about that family, and may have a bias, implicit or explicit bias, this is a good way to guard against that, to mitigate that potential that that's what's going to end up in the report, a bias. Absolutely record.
Last question. If an officer shows up without a warrant and you request that the officer present the warrant, what is your next step to either tell them to get off your property? I mean, now you're at loggerheads. You know, what's the effective thing to do in that case when you're requesting a warrant and they're responding?
What's unfortunate is you don't have to have a warrant to remove a child. You can have something called exigency, which are circumstances that allegedly illustrate that the caretaker either cannot provide supervision or is somehow placing the child in harm's way. So a social worker can go without a warrant if they can report later that, well, I had exigency. There was a concern. I just worked on a case where there was a search warrant at a house on the 21st of a month, and there was some drugs under a pillow from an occupant living in the house. 5 days later, even though those drugs were removed on the 21st, 5 days later on the 26th, the social worker said, well, I had exigency. Because after all, 5 days ago, there was some drugs under the pillow with an occupant in the house. And you know what? The court accepted that in that first report because all it needed was something on the face that looked reasonable, prima facie, even though it no longer existed. A warrant was not needed or required. And even when they provide what's called a removal warrant, remember how they get the removal warrant. They submit a request, they share information about their concerns, and that's what the judge uses to base their decision on to grant a removal warrant. So like Bob said earlier, even though the warrant was a really good idea to have another layer of checks and balances, how does the warrant come about? By information given by that social worker. Without any opportunity to examine the authenticity, the evidence, or anything that's factually relevant to the concerns. So there's some real holes in the system.
Hi, my name's Ambrose. I have a question for Mr. Dominguez. Have you ever seen CPS take into account a traumatic experience of the parent during a case plan? For example, a year into my case plan, my daughter's father died. It was a horrible death. And 2 months later, they terminated services for me. Do you ever see CPS even take into account the traumatic experiences during the case plan as to,
Sadly, when there is a traumatic experience or a serious loss that's encountered, either before or during your experience in the system, if it's an open case, oftentimes your reaction and response will be used against you. If you're having a real tough time and going through a rough patch and really struggling with it, you may find that in a report something to the effect of, well, doesn't seem to be able to handle what she's going through. She's having real issues. She may even be on antidepressants now. I'm not sure she can really take care of the child. So now we have another concern. Sadly, the system doesn't take it into consideration to help understand or provide support or say, you know what, we just need to be really mindful and appreciate that they're going through a struggle, so let's not bias our opinion or impression simply because they're working with a tough situation now. Unfortunately, the door seems to swing the other direction. And now we have one more issue about this caretaker or parent. Why? Our original position is correct. Because remember, it's that original position and disposition is what the psychology is and what the game plan is. And in that case that I talked about, even though it was clear there was never a basis for removing all of those kids, everything had to agree with that original position. Everything. Anything that didn't agree somehow mysteriously dropped out of reports, was censored, was altered, to make sure that original position was consistent. Because there is a mantra in our systems. It says, we speak with one voice. And you're told that over and over again as a worker. And you're told, well, I know you may not be completely comfortable, but it's okay, because we speak with one voice if you happen to be called in to testify. And these workers, oh my God, they are dying an existential death. Their spirits are being amputated because they don't want to do this, but they're afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid of being labeled insubordinate, being suspended, being fired. So they say, well, okay, the department's position is, and then when the judge, and most of the judges know the game, say, but what do you personally feel? Well, I don't have an independent position or thought, but the department's position is. So these judges oftentimes are playing a guessing game, trying to figure out butter, margarine, real, false, fake. And the sad truth is, they don't have the luxury of the facts or the truth most of the time. So it is a guessing game for our court system and our judges. And they're making these incredible decisions that affect the lives, not just of that immediate family system, but maybe for generations to come.
Let me add something. And the other key sometimes is to, for example, in direct response to the question, if there's a tragedy in the home, and they are, and do they take that into account? If there's a tragedy, do they take that into account in what's going on with your life? The answer is, well, of course they should. But sometimes you have to be proactive about it. For example, I recently had a client who has a dependency case, and she became pregnant during the case and was about to have a baby, and the baby was born, stillborn. And she was about to get her last child back. And I got on the phone immediately, and I said, I'm basically, in a nice way, I'm watching you. Do not use any reaction that the mother has against her in this case in chief. She lost a child. Take into account what she's going through. Don't use it against her and beat her over the head with it when you try to assess her as she's about to get her last child back in her home. And I was very proactive. And they knew I was watching them. And I never heard a peep out of them. She got her last child back 2 weeks later. But I had to be very proactive and like hover over them to make sure that they didn't try to take that and use it in some way against my client if she was going through a hard time in regards to that. I said it's completely separate and you have to look at it from that perspective. And they did what I said because they know I set it for trial. So, so if you have to be, you know, a lot of times attorneys don't have, like the court-appointed attorneys don't have the time or the attention to be proactive like that. My client was lucky, but many families are not that lucky. So, you know, I don't know what to say. If you get your attorney to just make a phone call, just make a little phone call to the social worker about it. I was kind of, you know, haunting them, but you know, it's helpful.
Or reach out for mental health experts that can help. If it is used against you, you can have a mental health expert say, you know what, her reaction is completely normal and absolutely reasonable based on what she experienced. Grief and loss, your reaction, your experience, the whole thing. Oftentimes, that's helpful to bring in an affidavit from a professional. So if it is brought up, say, no, look, no, this isn't related to the case in chief. It's related to what I went through. So let's not commingle situation.
Commingle.
Given that there's such a lack of attorneys who will take these cases on, is there any concerted effort in the law schools to attract people into this part of the profession? I can't imagine people not, you know, young people not being excited at the possibility of saving families and saving kids.
You know, the real simple truth is, it's 15% success rate. Attorneys, like anybody else, have to make a living. They care about the law, they care about trying to make a difference for people, that's why they go to the profession. But they gotta be able to make a living. And right now, given the current state of things, if you're only looking at 10, 15%, you're probably not going to be going to an area that you can't even provide for your own family. Thankfully, we have courageous folks like Carin and Robert and a few others that have found a way to make it work, but it's not easy. And it's not simple. We'd like to attract more of our best and brightest, and that's why we need the reform, not just in CPS, but in the courts and in the laws. And we need legislature to drive the reform so we can attract more, so we can level the playing field and take care of the cases that are righteous and the ones that should never entered the system.
I can add a little something to that. What I do in my small way is I mentor a lot of attorneys in my area. I show them the way, I teach them the law, and I say, just follow me around, follow me to court, just follow me around and see what I do, and I teach them, and then I mentor them to, you know, jump off their own springboard to take some of these cases, and I tell them, call me. I've got briefs, I've got motions, I've got all kinds of things, and I share it freely with people because I want them to have it, because I want them to do some good. And I have a lot of interns in law school that come and work, and they just, you know, learn the business. But I freely share my briefs, my motions, everything. I cut and paste sections of arguments and I email them out. I'm like, here, take it. And I had an appellate attorney call me today basically telling me that they wanted to cut and paste my argument. And I'm like, go for it. I'll send it to you via email, make it easy for you. I'm like, have at it. If it's going to help somebody, have at it. So that's my small way of trying to get people interested or attorneys interested in this business, this particular business.
And my second question is, do either of you or anyone in this room can bring us up to speed on CPS in Santa Cruz County?
Oh, jeez. I don't know Santa Cruz County, but I did have a case in Watsonville.
Well, that's county.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, okay, I know.
It's in the county.
I drove down here early in the morning. I will tell you the one experience I've had in this county. I thought it was actually a different county, but I had a trial where my client was not represented well for a long time. I filed a writ of habeas corpus in that case, and I was impressed in that courtroom. I'm not impressed often, but in my particular case, the judge listened. The county counsel was very bright, and I don't get that a lot. She was super smart, she knew the law, and I loved that. The minors counsel was bright and knew the law, and I was like, wow, what's going on around here? And I'll take a smart judge, a smart county counsel, just a smart opponent anytime over a dumb one. Because they understand the law and they'll tango with me on it. And because they know the law, right decisions are being made. In that particular case, I was able to save the child at the 11th hour from adoption. It was all bad, and it turned around right in the middle of trial. And my client looked at me and he goes, Carin, this is the first time in 2 years in this case that anyone has ever heard my story. And I just said, I'm so sorry, but they're hearing it now. I mean, we're here now, they're hearing it. And it worked. And I have to tell you that at one point in the case, the county counsel, I was telling the judge that what she was doing was illegal, basically. I try not to use the word illegal, but sometimes it comes out. So, Your Honor, it's against the law to make that ruling. And let me tell you why. And I was explaining to her the separation of powers issue, and all right, so I was right. And then the county counsel stepped in and was arguing my argument with me against the judge. So I was like, yeah. She's like, well, Miss Johnson's right. I'm like, well, I know I'm right, but thank you for saying so. And so the judge didn't do what she was going to do. So I actually had one experience I've had here. I had a very good experience in this county. But I've only had one, so I can't give you the general state of affairs in this county. But the one I had was good.
Hi, my name is Thomas, and I listened intently tonight, and it seems to me that there's a lot of illegal things going on the part of judges and the social services. And it's great when you win cases and people get their children back, but it seems to me that these illegal actions should be punished, penalized, fined, removed from office. So what are the chances of that happening, or is there a process in some sort of a stage to see that happens?
You can challenge a finding in appellate court. You can do what's called papering the judge or the referee, and you can take them to task when you take it to appellate court and try to have it overturned. And maybe you'll win, maybe you won't. But that's not going to really change the real systemic issues that result in the problem. It's not going to change the practice. We really do need legislation that actually has, as part of its language, severe penalties when they do not abide by the own laws in the book. We actually have laws that can help prevent this, but because they're so insulated, because of the lack of transparency, because the courts are closed, they're actually able to take the laws that are on the books and actually not really hold themselves to the letter of the law. They can play loose and fast with those rules and laws, and that's what we're seeing right now, and not hold themselves accountable, because no one's really watching. And if you don't challenge a case, and most of them aren't challenged, because most of the families are poor, and most of the families have public defenders, they're appointed. So usually it's never challenged. Usually, sadly, they reach the end of their case, jurisdiction is taking, they order disposition, and that's it. And if they still don't like you at the end, kids are adopted out. And sadly, that's the normal course. That is the rule of thumb, and not the exception. So we really need legislation that has the kind of teeth you're talking about to say, if you make this error, it's going to be severe. We're going to have penalties. You may lose your ability to practice, either as a referee, judge, or an attorney. We need real stringent penalties when they play fast and loose and decide it's okay to make this decision without evidence, without actual events of abuse or neglect. That's what we really need.
How do we get that to happen?
I have something to add to that dismal fact. If the attorney does not object when they're supposed to, okay, like, the evidence code, okay, I say it like that because I don't see them objecting. All they have to do is object, even if the judge, overrules their objection. Make the objection, because in reality, if the parent loses that trial and wants to appeal, the appellate attorney can't do anything unless there's an objection in the record. If they didn't object, they can't argue it. So you see the domino effect here? So this was part of my frustration after all these years, and this is why the writ of habeas corpus, it covers that. Excuse me, writ of habeas corpus, they should have objected, and they didn't. So that's why that's the vehicle, my newest, coolest vehicle for helping people. And it's a tough one to win because logical analysis being done about it. But that's the avenue right there. That's what happens.
There's another huge disadvantage. One of the most time-consuming things for an attorney in law is researching other cases, points of authority. Researching cases that have been tried and won at a higher level, at a higher court. Well, the lower courts can't go against points of authority when a decision has been made and won at a higher court. But because these attorneys that are appointed, these public defenders, don't have any time even to talk to their clients, they're not going to spend hours and hours researching these other cases at these higher levels, these other courts, to bring it in as a defense to help their client. They don't even have time to talk to their clients. So they can't even use the evidence that's already there that's powerful, these other cases, because the lower courts cannot contest those cases. They have to say, okay, that's right. You have a solid points of authority. This case was tried. It's exactly the same. And they decided door A. So I'm sorry, opposing counsel, no. They have points of authority. There was a finding. They don't have time to even do that. So the things that are at their disposal simply aren't available, and it is not a level playing field for our families.
Just thinking about what you said, it seems to me that if we get the legislation and the fact that you're dealing with a lot of poor families, and they have to pay you, which is fair, and they have to pay court costs maybe, it seems the penalty should include financial remuneration to the poor families, or to any family that has been dragged through by criminal.
Absolutely, just like criminal court, the loser should pay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
First of all, I want to say this has been an absolutely amazing evening. I feel like I've been... I feel like I'm in the beginning of a revolution, you know, we're on the ground floor and something huge has to happen. So I can't tell you how grateful I am for what you've been saying. Just the power of your personal examples is amazing. I kind of backed into a case that was shocking to me about a month ago here in Santa Cruz County, and I don't really know yet what's going on and what happened, but I was shocked to my core and pulled way back from my involvement. I was working so the question is basically, what I was challenged on is that I was so angry at the decision to take the two children away from the family that I had been working with through another program, not through CPS, but through a pilot program called Foster Ed, where you work with the mentor, where you work with the biological parent, and they were in the dependency court, and they were being threatened with having the kids taken away. So I was working with them, and you know, I got to know the family, and they were making progress, and the mom was doing all the right stuff, going to the parenting class. She was, you know, she didn't have a car, but she was going all the time through all the things they were telling her to do to get removed. She was she was with her kids. They hadn't been taken away yet. And then somehow I got into a meeting at CPS, which I thought was just about sharing information between all the stakeholders, the teachers and the principals and the social workers and the therapists of the kids and the therapists of the parent. And I was there because of my association with Foster Ed for a couple months. I didn't really know anything. And this is where, and what happened is that, I'm so emotional thinking about this, is that suddenly I realized that I was like at the executioner's final conference by mistake. And they were just doing exactly what you said, which was they didn't want to hear my opinion or some of the other therapists. They were just gathering evidence. And then at the end of the meeting, they said, and we're going to recommend removal. And it was like, I fell off my chair. I thought, I can't believe this is happening. So I wrote a long, long letter. I just, you know, I spent the whole day writing this letter to the judge. I didn't know who to write. And then I told the woman I was working with at the other program that I was going to write this letter. She said, I want to see it first. I said, I'll show it to you. I don't know what I'm doing.
Speak up.
Maybe they have more information than I do. I've just known this family a couple of months. So there was a tremendous amount of pressure from CPS. I like calling it CPS again, because that's what I know how to say.
It's CPS.
It is CPS. And a lot of pressure from them. And so that they finally got me not to write that letter. They said, it's all being reviewed. You know, and I can't believe I backed down. But they said, you know, the head of CPS called me and said, I've read it, we're taking it into consideration, we know better, you know, about this thing. So I feel like I was like, I should have really just sent the letter to the judge or to the I didn't know what to do, so what should I have done?
You know, don't feel bad about it, and please don't beat yourself up about it, because all of us want to believe and trust that this CPS agency is actually acting in the best interest of the clients, and we want to feel that way, because who wants to feel like we live in communities where the one agency that's tasked with our responsibility isn't actually doing that, may have another agenda, and may have a real broken system. We don't want to know that and believe it, and until you encounter it like this, you can't possibly know that that's what's taking place. Had you known that, I'm quite certain you would have said, no, I'm going to write this and submit it. You can refuse to take it, but I'm going to write it. But you didn't know that. Now that you know now, chances are you'd probably write a lot of letters. And you probably wouldn't say, you know, take their word for it. And sadly, when they tell you, oh, we got it covered, no. Write the letter, write a declaration, sign it, and give it to the parents or give it to the attorney of the parents yourself. Because this is what the court doesn't have most of the time. The facts, the truth, what really represents that caretaker or that parent. And they need that. And what you observed is absolutely relevant. What you saw with your own two eyes, what you heard with your own ears is absolutely relevant. But even social workers are told, no, you really didn't see that, and I don't think you heard that, and you know what, you're probably not understanding the complexity, but we got it covered. So it's okay to write this and omit this, and it's okay to kind of frame it this way. Write it, sign it, submit it.
So
Could she still do that?
Yes,
Yes, you can.
Yes.
You can still write
Yes.
it.
We're taking this into consideration. No, they're not. Oh, it's a big, humongous lie. No, they're not. So the other part is when you give it to the attorney for the parent, I love it. You know, the parent should remind the attorney, excuse me, you've got this letter here, you know, can you submit it? Can you call her as a witness? Can you deal with it? You have to get the lawyer to act on it too. But it's everything you can do within your power. So yes, write the letter, let them know. Maybe it'll catch someone's attention and they'll talk to you, they'll interview you, they'll put you on the stand. You seem like you'd be a pretty credible witness if you were with the family a few months beforehand. And they just want to keep you happy and get rid of you, frankly.
Absolutely.
They just want to get rid of you. That's what they want to do.
I guarantee if your letter said something else, if it agreed with their position, oh my goodness, they would have bought you lunch, maybe supper.
You'd be in there record all about you.
Oh my gosh, a video.
Yeah.
I have a several-pronged question, and I'm going to try and see if I can keep things organized.
Get closer to the mic.
As you know, many of the people that are dealing with the system don't have a lot of money. What about the circumstance where a person is not represented by counsel, can't afford it, maybe their funds got drained because they spent it on an attorney and they used up all their money? Do they have a right to object, and would that objection rise to the same threshold as an attorney should they be represented? Another part of the question is, if the person is a de facto parent as opposed to an actual parent, does that person still have the same standing? And another question is, if a party wanted to present information because indeed it didn't seem that the judge had all the information, new judge on the case isn't well informed, is it legal for the judge to be in receipt of information, or does that information have to be imparted to all of the attorneys, or is it still illegal to present information? And I'll try and stop, even though those aren't all the questions I have.
In dependency court, every parent and child are entitled to be represented by an attorney. So they're not going to push you through court without a lawyer. You are given a lawyer. You have that right.
This person doesn't have an attorney and is not, she might have a right to an attorney, but she can't afford it and doesn't have an attorney.
Something's wrong, because she has a right to an attorney. She has
There's no
an attorney.
charge for it.
Yeah, it's free.
If they can't afford it, they are given an attorney.
And
so what can that person do in order to get an attorney?
She needs to call the local public defender's office if they're handling the dependency cases. Sometimes they're contract agencies, but they'll get her to the right person. They'll get her to the right place. Okay, so children also are appointed attorneys. And the attorneys half the time never even lay eyes on their client, although they're supposed to. Okay? They don't even know who their client is. So the children's attorney the children have an attorney, and de facto parents, when you get the status of de facto parent, it's that you've shown the court enough information that you've been involved in the child's life enough in their daily care and needs and things that you've risen to the level of de facto parent. If you're granted that, you're entitled to reports. There's a split of opinion between court after court after court, whether the de facto parent is entitled to standing to set a trial, to argue a motion. It's split. So, trust me, with enough talking and blah blah motions and demanding, you can get what you want. So they just wanted to shut you up and give you the damn hearing, okay? So, but there's a split of whether they have a right to contest or bring motions before the court and argue. And then what was the last question? The last part?
It would have to do with an ex parte communication.
Oh, yeah, ex parte communications are not allowed. So often when you write a letter to a judge, you'll see sometimes it's sent back to you. So if you want to get a message to a judge, you do a proof of service that says, I've also sent a copy of this to every other party and their representative on the case. And sometimes they will then accept it at the bench and ask, did everybody receive a copy of this? Yes, Your Honor. And since everyone received a copy, most of the time the judge will accept it. Sometimes they'll just say, well, somebody presented it to me in another way.
Are the rules of discovery the same for CPS as it is for the regular jury trial? The rules of discovery.
Right, but in criminal cases, you can hold on to all your stuff all by yourself. You don't have to share it unless you're going to use it. In CPS cases, there's a liberal discovery exchange policy. Okay? So you have to give it to them. If you're going to use it, more likely going to use it, and sometimes you don't know until the last second. So, they say they're giving you all discovery, but they don't. So usually that's not a fight people get into in court because they don't want to be called on it. Nobody wants to be called on it. But I have asked them to open their files, and I want to look at every last document. And I want to tell Jerry that when he says there's ghostwriting, I saw it with my own 2 eyes. I saw the ghostwriting, okay? I saw they left a document in there where the social worker wrote a report and then somebody wrote comments, and they said, one of the comments before they submitted the report was, Minors Counsel doesn't want this in the report.
They forgot to omit it.
I'm like, what, really? So you talked to the Minors Counsel before you wrote this report and submitted it to court? What an interesting separation of powers issue and conflict issue there is there. So I got a copy because the person copying didn't know what they were doing. I got a copy of that. I'm like, I'll use this later. But it was all there. It was like, take this out, add more of this. It was just like he said. It was just exactly what he said.
When it comes to the discovery issue, it doesn't seem to apply across the board with the department. There are many situations where suddenly things get lost, misplaced. I'm not too sure where the worker put it or what file it's in, Your Honor, but we'll provide it at some point. And a lot of times the courts are very considerate of the department when they misplace things, even though it could be a critical piece of evidence, because supposedly this piece of evidence supports their assertion, their allegation. And a lot of times they're not required to provide that piece of evidence, because after all, the social worker wouldn't lie. I mean, they wouldn't falsify a report. Of course not. They care about kids. So the discovery issue is a real problem a lot of times when it comes to the department, as far as making sure that that requirement really is imposed across the board.
All right, how about this one, the vitamin D test? Remember the vitamin D test? That was a 30-year board-certified pediatric child abuse expert. How come I saw the line and she didn't? How come I saw that line in the medical records and she didn't? So I think she was hoping nobody would see it. Or she never read the medical records. She just got up there to say her thing. So you know, the hard work pays off in this business. Hard work pays off. Putting people on notice, just keep doing it. Keep doing it. Sometimes they just give up.
I just want to make it clear, I'm going to build a comment about, it seems like there's collusion between the councils, because I was involved in the case and there was delay after delay, and I decided I'm not refusing my right for delay. I wanted to go to trial today because I felt like I was prepared. It was a traffic thing. But I was shocked at how the courts on both sides were willing to just let it go for weeks and weeks and weeks.
A fraternity and a sorority.
Yeah.
If everybody's paid from the same purse, it's really hard to get objectivity, neutrality, and real zealous representation independently.
What is that minimum time?
So I had a case in Napa County not too long ago, a few weeks ago, representing a grandparent. And the day before trial, I was telling the county, you know, I'm going to bring this evidence. And he goes, well, what evidence? I said, well, I've got videos. He goes, videos? I'm like, yeah. I got videos of the grandparents playing with the kids that you don't want to give them to at the park during visitations in your CPS world. He couldn't believe it. He's like, videos? He goes, well, I need to see them. And so I'm trying to figure out how to download them on these disc things, so I'll just bring it tomorrow. Well, there's the benefit of videotaping. They weren't paying attention, and Grandma and Grandpa were videotaping themselves playing with the grandkids. In the report, it says they were unable physically to care for the children. Really? They're on a play structure, 6 feet in the air. They're climbing up and down the ladders. It's on video. So then the attorney said, well, you know, what do you think about a continuance? We just get this thing continued. And I said, a continuance? Well, why? Well, I don't know, just, you know, I'm just wondering, maybe you just want to continue it. I go, well, okay, but why? Why? I mean, I don't understand. Can you tell me why? Well, I just thought I'd mention it. Okay, well, I can't think of a good reason, so no. See you tomorrow morning.
Okay, I think we need to close for the night. I have to thank these experts. Let's give them a round of applause. You've really brought out a lot of facts for us, and you've given us some hope. And I want to thank the audience for coming, because you had the guts to show up and look at this issue. Thank you.